manifold in position, but if you can get one, if you get drilling and drill one, then you can possibly take the manifold off and to drill the others. But whatever you do, watch it doesn't move, and this end is easier, you'll be able to get in and drill holes like that. As long as you've got a totem amount, hold it in, that's the main thing.
So I'm going to start on the passenger side first, and if you start on the passenger side first and drill your few holes, this will locate your engine, and if you do have to take your manifold off, this will ensure that your engine won't move out of position when you come to drill the opposite side. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to take a good quality drill. This is about a 5mm drill. This will give you a good pilot hole and it'll be a lot easier to drill, and then you'll drill your holes out afterwards to a larger size of your 10mm or 8mm. So I'm going to start with this hole here. Make sure you get your drill nice and in the centre of the hole, and just start off. And remember to go steady, as you don't want your drill to snatch and damage any of your side panels, so you're going to go nice and steady. That's gone all the way through the aluminium. Now I'm just going to get 2 holes in this to start. See, a good quality drill will make your life a lot easier. So after I've drilled the first 2 pilot holes, I'm going to drill these out to a 10mm diameter, and I'm just going to put 2 bolts in those 2 holes. This will stop any movement of your plates, and then you can proceed to drill your holes. And we're going to do the exact same procedure on the driver's side spreader plates. I've got my first 2 pilot holes there and there, and again I'm going to come, this is a 10mm drill, this is a good quality performance drill, and again just start with your first hole, nice and steady. Again, watching, going really slowly and watching for it snatching, damaging your panels or even your hands. You don't want to be hurting your hands. Keeping your drill nice and straight. That's your first hole. I'm going to same here. Once I've done that, I'm just going to take a couple of 10mm bolts. I'm going to just pass those through that hole. This again will stop your plates from moving about while you drill the rest of your holes. And after you've drilled that, you might want to just get your hoover in and hoover out all the excess kerf and burrs. I'm going to proceed and drill holes where I can in the same manner. Still in the passenger side on these trays, and we're drilling them, and obviously as you can see we've come to the other end, and as you can see here, that's where you put your bolts in previously, and that's roughly running along that line there. And it really is important. I know it may be a little bit obvious, but you don't want to be drilling within that line, because obviously you don't want to be trying to drill through an existing bolt. So just offset your hole maybe 1 inch from the end there, and that's where I'm going to drill the first part hole. pilot hole. And again, I'm going to drill it out with my 10mm drill, and that should miss the existing bolts. We're now going to come back to the front wishbone sections, and what you're going to need next is your stub axle, a stub axle adapter. This you'll have to buy in the extra pack as Michael's done. You need your wishbones. There's a set of wishbones here, pair. You're going to get a track rod end, a locking nut, and also a brake disc. So the first thing you're going to have to do is we're going to put on the locking nut there, track rod end locking nut. I should say that your back of your threads roughly want to be halfway on as a good starting point. And you're going to come track rod end. That wants to be pointing up.
Remove the plastic cap.
Remember to put your nut somewhere safe, because these aren't a standard nut, they're a specialised thread, so you really need to keep those safe.
We've already removed the nut off the
Bottom
ball joint on the wishbone. So now we're going to take this and drop that on. Screw that back on, the nut.
So we'll start off, I'm going to put the stub axle adapter on there. Take the nut that you got off. You'll need a long socket, put that in there. It can be awkward to get your thread started on this, so you just have to be quick. So just get that rough tight like that. Now, you line that up with your hole, push it down. You'll notice on your stub axle adapter that it's got a boss in here that's tapered at an angle. Now, before you start to insert it, you want to get your angle of that boss angled towards the outside of the car on that sort of plane, aiming roughly in the centre of your wing bracket, and then once you've got that into some sort of position, you can then start to insert it into your stub axle. Just tap it with the that one's gone in lovely. You may find that if it's hard to get that in, you can get a screwdriver or a long screwdriver or something.
Prise it open with that.
And just, there's a little prizing gap there at the back, you may just have to prise that open slightly. So, once we've done that, we can get the
track rod end.
And we need to be aiming really to get your steering rack centralised on both sides. You can measure out, and then you're going to try and put that in to that hole. That's there. I'm just going to put the nut on there. So that's looking pretty good.
So then put the disc on.
So now we're sure that all those components are fitted onto the stub axles, and we've got a track rod ends and everything. I'll just explain a few things to you. What you really need to do is, I'm going to come off my centre line here on my car, and I'm going to use my centre plate. You can use a set square or something. And you really need to be putting your centre line on your steering rack. That should give you your centre of your steering column, or steering rack. And then what you need to do is to be taking a measurement, measure through from your centre to, if Andy can just get it, push that out of the way. And you're going to measure to, I like to measure to the edge of the threads here, and you're going to do the same on the other side. And what you can do is you can move this in and out, just tap it either one way or the other until you've got the same measurement from your centre of your steering rack on both sides of your car, and this will make sure that your steering rack's in the centre. This will give you a maximum amount of steering. Once you've ascertained that you've got that into the centre, you can then come around here, and you can see that your track rod ends are going to be handed, and you can see this wing here that it's got on, and the ball joint is actually offset. If you can see that, it's offset from the centre of your track rod end. So it's intended that when that's in the upright position, this wing is going to be pointing to the back, to the rear of the car, and you then going to, and be careful when you're moving this around that you're not moving in and out, because that's going to keep your steering rack into the centre. And you push that in there, put a washer on, nuts. Again, make sure you don't lose these nuts because they are a special thread. I'm just going to nip that up slightly. And then that's the socket. To go too tight at this time, just nip that up slightly. So what you're then going to need to be doing is to get your disc here, brake disc, brake drum, what I'm going to take a long straight edge. Now I'm just doing this to show you, you may need a longer straight edge. What we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that that there is sat on there, and I'll run a straight edge on the flat of that, and I'm going to be looking to make sure that this is running parallel with the side of the car. So you can imagine that you've got your front of your car is at a taper, and obviously your wheels want to be running parallel to each other. So that's looking pretty good to me. And you'll also be able to notice, you might not be able to see it here any great extent, but the actual stub axle is slightly offset from back to front, looking in from the top. That's all intended to be like that. And your steering rack here, your bar, should be running pretty parallel, which it is. That's the reason that that is offset there. And once you've got that, you can next move on to the next stage. So the next stage, we're going to come to fit the brake pad, brake caliper, and this is a new brake caliper. You may think that your old one's quite alright. We're going to use a brand new one. So this has got a plastic stop. This is to stop your brake shoes from falling in, collapsing. So you just remove that. Be careful you don't nudge anything out of the way. So you can see that we've got a plastic bung in here. This is on the top, and we've also got a nipple here, and this is going to be on the top. These are handed, again, there's going to be one for the left, one for the right. Make sure that you've got it this way up. So that's going to sit onto your brake drum, brake disc. You've got two locating holes here and here. So that should sit on the inside like that. You see that anti-works point there. You're just going to basically bolt it on. So those two bolts should locate that position. May have to just jiggle it around, make sure that it's not catching, that's nice and free as you can see. And make sure that this is the reason we're giving you these stub axle adapters as a separate component, because you will have to jiggle that around until it suits your own car and taste. So once that's into position, what you can do is slide the wheel over. Get that on there. So you're going to put your wheel on, maybe just run a couple of nuts onto that. I'm not going to do that just for the speed of showing you. You may just want to pinch that up with a couple of nuts. As you can see, you've got quite a gap between this bar. What you're going to have to do is going to even that up, equal distance from your tyre. So that's pretty good, maybe a couple of millimetres there. Okay. So once you've done that, if you carefully remove your wheel, if you've got access to a welder, then you may want to just tack this stub axle adapter on. Obviously don't weld it on fully on your car. You may want to just put a little tack on. If you don't feel confident welding it on in position, what you can do is just put a little mark, maybe with a white marker like that, and like that. And then that will allow you to remove that setup and weld it off your car, tack it on your car. And as you can see also that you may have to move this stub axle adapter around, and what you need to be aiming for is, once you've set up your old wheel like that, is you need your top ball joint here, the pin, to be pretty parallel both ways, and that stub axle adapter is offset there. So what you can do is just, if it's not in position, you can just take a large pair of mole grips or something like that and just twist that around left or right until your bearing in here, your ball joint is sat exactly how you want it, and then once it's in position you'll mark it or tack it on the car. If you're going to tack it on the car, I would advise you to put a good shield, maybe some thick cardboard or a bit of carpet or something like that on your wishbones and on the side of your car so you don't get spatter on your car. and then take it off, obviously, weld it. Once you've welded it, make sure it's fully cooled down. Do not cool it in water. This can make your weld crack, things like that. Allow it to cool down on its own, in its own natural way, and then you can fit that back onto your car.
Right, we're now going to put the roll bar onto the back of the car. So we'll now drop it on and position it up. You can see it's got the rear stay there, which sits up to the back panel. That lip sits down in between the two into the recess. So centre it up.
So it should be the same width as your car, so it should come nice and parallel down here on both sides. The first thing I'd worry about is to get the bend here flat up against your seat back panel. Once that's there, flat there.
And that's pretty much it. Now we can drill straight through. Right, that's the roll bar temporary fixed and screwed down well enough so that we can move on to fitting the rear shock absorbers and put it in the tank.
The lads now have temporarily put the rollover bar on, and it's looking quite good. You'll see that the stays are quite flexible and you can pull those down to meet the body as necessary. There is quite a few holes already in the rollover bar base, but you will have to drill some more for the shock absorber mounting. That's the shock absorber mounting that you get in the kit, and you can see that depending on what shock absorbers you're going to fit and the actual height of the ride height of the car, depending on what application you've got, you can fit that round either way. But for this particular operation, we're going to put the shock absorber on and put the bracket on the top like that. And then once we've got it in position, we're going to project through, measure from the side and then drill through the top. What I want you to remember is that this end of the shock absorber, the bolt is 3/8, where on the top end it's a 10mm bolt. It's the same thing. You'll need to put spacers in between the body, the two brackets, and the shock absorber bush. So you'll need to pack those out with washers or spacers. And then we know we have a measurement from the end of the body that we think is the preferred measurement. So from the end of the body to where you're going to drill that hole needs to be 190 millimeters. But the whole idea of this setup is that this bracket can move anywhere along the top that you wish in order to make the car at the right height that you like it yourself. So we think to start off at that measurement I've just given you should be right. But if you find that you've got if you've got big friends and you've got a lot of weight you're going to carry in the car, a snap-on toolbox, extra fuel, then you may need to move that. Alternatively, you may wish to fit different shock absorbers to what we should have here. Again, that would affect the position. So these lads are going to carry on now and fit these shock absorbers in position. You may want to drill a series of holes along the top there, so it's an easy job for you to move that. Or you could have a series of holes in that bracket. So you've got quite a few options open to you. Just remember that you'll need at least 2 10mm bolts in there to secure the top of that. Before we put both shock absorbers on, I'd like to introduce the fuel tank to you. Now you don't get this in the kit, and this is the simplest of all the Robin Hood tanks. Because it's a Pinto engine and it's got a mechanical pump on the tank, then a mechanical pump on the engine, you won't need an electric pump in the tank. So this is a medium-sized tank, and this must go in before you put the shock absorber in. So this very simply just slides up like that through the gap, like so. It goes in and a straightforward thing. And then you can either fit it, mount it as near the passenger and driver, or back in the back of the compartment. Just remember that if you do fit it towards the back, it's a good idea to put a sheet of quarter ply against this back aluminium surface so that the corners of the tank don't damage the back panel. So once you've got it in, then I can cover with you later on how you're going to fix it in permanently. So the lads are going to carry on now, and they're going to put both shock absorbers on both sides of the car and carry on and put bolts in the roll bar to finally bolt the roll bar into position.
Should be able to get that. This one.
Yeah, you may have to lift it up a bit.
Right, I'm lifting it. Right. Push it out like that. That's it. No. Right, that's it. Spring on.
So we've got the spring in position, and at this time, if you're happy that that is everything's where it's going to be, you obviously need to tighten up all your nuts. You have to tighten this large nut up here if you haven't already done so, then you can fit your wheel. coming now, we've put the wheels on the car and we're going to jack up the car slightly, remove the boxes to drop it onto the floor, and this will find